I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar on assistive technology, non-visual access to a visual world, and it's going to be presented by Abby Jayasuriya. So now Abby Jayasuriya is an Assistive Technology Specialist at Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT. She provides training and support on the use of assistive technology and draws on her own lived experience of having a visual impairment to obtain the best outcomes for her clients. She has relied heavily on assistive technology herself from when she learned to touch type in primary school to her access of printed materials at university, and finally, the full transition of using a screen reader for work. She believes the exploration of assistive technology is a journey and highly enjoys sharing this journey with others. So thank you so much, Abby, for joining us today. I'm very, very interested in to hear what you have to say, as I think every single one of our attendees. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Jill, for that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone once again to the webinar. Just before I start, I just wanted to give a disclaimer as well. I'm getting my computer to read out the notes on the PowerPoint presentation to me, so there might just be a bit of a pause between sentences, and I'll explain to you how this works a little bit later because you might be interested in that. So first of all, what is assistive technology? And when I ask this, I'm talking about assistive technology specifically for someone with a visual impairment. Basically, assistive technology is any kind of technology rather that can help us achieve a task more easily. And there's three main categories that I like to use when talking about assistive technology. So the first one is devices that are designed specifically for people with a visual impairment. So this might be something like a talking book reader or a talking clock. The next type is software. And this might be something that's built into a device, so it comes with the device. Or it might be third-party software, so an external company that creates this software to help someone with a vision impairment. And the third category is our mainstream devices. So this is devices that are built for everyone in the public, but that may have features that specifically benefit someone with a vision impairment. And I'll be talking about things from these various categories today. The first type of assistive technology I wanted to talk about today are screen readers. Now, screen readers are generally software that convert visual information on the screen into auditory feedback. So you remember how I said that I was getting my computer to read my slides to me? That's using my screen reader, which is called JAWS, and I'm using that on my Windows laptop. Screen readers are pretty common nowadays. They can be found on different devices such as computers, tablets, phones, and even some ATMs. Now, I wanted to give you a little demonstration of one. Hopefully you can hear this. So you might be able to see on the right of the screen, there is a screenshot of an iPhone home screen. So it's got that grid of icons. Now, I've just picked up my iPhone. I'm going to try and turn the screen reader up a little bit so you can hear it. Hopefully you can hear it, but if you can't, I will also repeat what it's saying, and I might just slow it down a little bit. I tend to have it a little bit fast. 52%. Okay. So the way a screen reader works generally, specifically on a touch screen, is that the screen reader has its own cursor. So if you can see the picture on the right of the screen, you might notice that there's a rectangle, there's a rectangle covering the messages icon. So I might tap on that icon now, somewhere at the top of the screen. So I'll just turn it up a bit more and hold it towards my microphone. And let's say, let's say I want to know what's on the right of messages. So I could explore the screen by swiping left and right, and then the cursor will move and the phone will tell me what the cursor is now on. So let's do that now.
Calendar, Thursday.
So saying calendar and Thursday.
Photos.
Then it's saying photos. And if I wanted to go back to messages again, I would just swipe towards the left until I find it.
calendar, third, messages, 2 in red messages.
So basically, and now it said messages if you couldn't hear that. And basically that allows people with all sorts of vision, even someone with no vision, to be able to access a device with a touchscreen. Now, when you're using a computer, it's a little bit different. As someone with sight, you would generally be navigating your computer a lot with the mouse or the trackpad, and you might only use the keyboard to enter text. But when you're using a screen reader, you would be doing all the navigation on your computer using the keyboard. So for example, depending on whether you have a Windows or a Mac, you would use your up and down or left and right arrows, and maybe your tab key, and maybe some other key combinations to do specific processes for the screen reader. So my main point to you today, if you take away one thing from this webinar, I would like it to be that if you know you are going to have declining vision, or if you have declining vision, please start learning to touch type. I know a lot of people get annoyed when I say this, because they say, oh, I'm not accurate. I'm not always 100% sure that I'm doing things correctly. And that's okay. You don't have to be a very proficient typist. You just need to be able to know where the keys are generally on the keyboard. So all the letter keys and all the other keys kind of above and underneath and to the sides, like your control key, your alt key, your arrows, obviously, which I mentioned. Just knowing generally where those keys are and be able to access them fairly quickly doesn't mean your typing has to be 100% accurate. I know mine certainly is not. So yes, please learn touch typing when you have the sight to do so. Not necessarily because you need sight to learn touch typing. There are people that have completely lost their sight that can lose it too. But once you get to that stage where you have got no sight, it can sometimes be it can be a bit of a roller coaster emotionally as well as physically. So you might not have the drive to do the touch typing because you're adapting to so many other things in your life. So again, I would really strongly recommend learning that touch typing early. And even if you have sight, it'll just make your use of the computer so much faster, and you'll turn yourself into a computer whiz just by learning touch typing. Now, screen readers can also convert information into Braille. So if you can read Braille already, this can be really handy. I know some people say, people say Braille is going extinct, like the giraffes. To some extent, paper Braille, so Braille that's printed in books, is kind of becoming, well, I wouldn't say it's becoming extinct, but maybe it's being used a little bit less. But Braille on a digital Braille display is used very often. So if you can imagine that you're at a meeting, so maybe you're at the book club or you're at a meeting for work and you've got someone presenting, and you might want to have your Braille kind of, you might want to have, what's on your computer coming into the Braille device, so you don't have to hear the screen reader talking. So you can mute the screen reader while it's still on, but whatever's happening on your computer, you can still access it as Braille in the tactile means. So for example, if you want to jot notes in a meeting while someone's presenting, or you might disagree with the person that's presenting, and you might just want to send a snarky remark to another friend or a colleague, you could do that discreetly during a meeting. If my manager is watching, I can assure her that I've never done this during one of our team meetings, and that's basically because my Braille's not good enough yet. Just joking. Yeah, so that's screen readers in a nutshell. Very important in the technology world because it gives you access to mainstream devices, which you can lose when your sight is declining. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is OCR devices or OCR technology, or other text to speech. So a screen reader is a form of text to speech because it's converting text into speech. And there are different other different methods of achieving this as well. So a screen reader is fantastic, but if you receive a document that is saved as image files, your screen reader will only say that that's an image. It won't be able to read the text. And this is why optical character recognition is so important. So there are a few different types of OCR devices and software. So I'll talk about software first. You can get apps on your phone could be on an Android or an Apple phone, so any smartphone. They have different apps that you can get. So you would be able to scan a document and then you could import it into the app or get the app to kind of convert it into this text-based document, which you can then read with your screen reader. It's much easier than trying to peer at a tiny screen. So an example that I've got here is Voice Dream Reader. Voice Dream Scanner rather, for Apple devices. This is an app that's about $10, and again, you can use it to scan documents. So if you imagine you've got a letter in the post, you don't have anyone at home with you at the time, you have no idea what this letter is or who it's from, and you want to read it instantly, you can take a picture using this app and then it will convert it into text and you can then read it. If you're using a computer, the best software that you could use is one called OpenBook for Windows and another one called Abby Fine Reader, which was not named after me, although I like to joke that it was. Abby Fine Reader for the Mac computers. Those can be a little bit expensive. Well, I know OpenBook is quite expensive, but Fine Reader is more affordable. Now, you might also want to use an actual device. So let's say you're not very comfortable using a smartphone or a computer. I know there's many clients that will generally use a different device. So I'll have a little chat about those now. So the first type of devices is what I like to call standalone devices. So that just means it would have a camera mounted on an arm. And I've got one pictured at the top right of this slide. It's a Read Easy Evolve. It's a tricky one to say. Read Easy Evolve. It's got maybe a C-shaped arm with a base underneath where you place your document, and then you've got the camera up the top facing down towards the base. Another one is the Clear Reader. Or you might want to have a device that does both magnification and the optical character recognition, or OCR. So some examples of that are the ZoomX Snow and the Prodigy. So the Prodigy is pictured on the bottom right of this slide, and it's just it looks kind of like a tablet screen, and that's also mounted on an arm. So you could use that to, again, you could view the document on there, but if your eyes are getting fatigued, you might want to just get it to snap a photo and then it would start reading it out to you. So these devices, both the Read Easy and the Prodigy, they will actually have audio, so it reads it out to you as well, which can be very handy. And often you can go back and forth. So if you kind of miss something, if there's like a date, you want to refresh your memory on what that was, you can go back and check that information out again, which is very handy. So the next thing I wanted to talk about are shortcuts via keyboard and voice. So first, let's talk about keyboard shortcuts. So getting back to that touch typing and the importance of it, a lot of people will use their mouse to do certain things on the computer. But if you find that you have declining vision, you can use your keyboard to do a lot of things as well. So even if you can still see the mouse pointer, but it's hard to locate, you might want to do certain things just using your keyboard. So for example, the magical kind of area on a Windows computer is the Start button on the bottom left, which you can access just with the tap of the Windows key on the keyboard, which might be the second or third key from the bottom left, depending on your keyboard layout. But basically, by accessing the Start menu, you can type in the name of a file or a folder or an application and just be able to open it straight away rather than going to your desktop and trying to kind of to look around and find the particular icon, or first finding a folder and then a subfolder and then a file. You would be able to find that file directly through the Start menu, particularly if it's a file that you've opened recently. And on the Mac, you can do the same thing using the Spotlight search, which you can get up with Command and the spacebar. And you can do a lot of other things with the keyboard too. So for example, you can create new folders, you can start a new document, you can save a document, and you can copy, cut, and paste files. So many things that you can do. You can format text. And it can be quite overwhelming. So if you're just getting started with keyboard shortcuts, I would first think about what are the tasks that I do most often, and then maybe just work some keyboard shortcuts around those, and then slowly build up your knowledge of them. And again, that will make your computer use so much faster, regardless of whether you have a vision impairment or not. The next type of shortcuts that I wanted to talk about are shortcuts with your voice. Now, you may have heard of a virtual assistant. Pictured on the right of this slide is a Google Home and an Amazon Echo device. So these devices help you do things with your voice that would maybe take you a little bit longer to do using a computer or a phone. So for example, you might want to put in a calendar entry just using your device. So if you tell the device to put in the entry, it might ask you for the date and time, and it might ask you for the location and the name of the event. So that would be a lot quicker than going to your phone, opening up the calendar, starting a new event and typing in all those details. It's just a nice, quick and easy way of doing that. And you can also use virtual assistants to do things like tell you the time, tell you the weather. They can set timers, which is really handy if you're cooking in the kitchen as well, to have it set a timer and have the timer go off while you're kind of doing other things. And speaking of the kitchen, you can also ask your virtual assistant to look up recipes as well, which is really cool. And I know that I'm not sure about Siri, but I know that the Google and the Amazon ones will tell you that recipe step by step. And you can get it to repeat the ingredients or just follow along at your own pace, which is really cool. And you can also use them to find information on the internet as well. So if you wanted to know who'd won the most recent footy match, for example, you might want to ask the Google or the Amazon one. I'm not going to say her name because there's one here and I always set her off. But the important thing to note with your virtual assistant is that it should not replace a screen reader on your phone. The screen reader gives you complete and total control and access of your phone, unless there's certain apps that are inaccessible, but in a perfect world, there wouldn't be. But basically, your virtual assistant can do certain things that it's programmed to do, but it might not be able to find old emails and then delete those, for example. So you would still need to use your screen reader to do that. So if you're getting started with technology, by all means, start using the virtual assistant. And then when you're feeling comfortable with that, you can move on to learning how to use a screen reader, because that can be a little bit more complex. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is assistive apps. There are many apps that we can use that can give us assistance in our daily lives. And today I'm going to talk about some that are specific to people with a vision impairment. So they've been designed specifically to help us with particular tasks. So the first type of app is an app for object and text recognition. So on the right of this screen, we've got a picture of the Seeing AI app recognizing a bottle of Swiss vitamin D. Just for the text. So there's three main apps that you can use for the object and text identification, and those are Seeing AI, which I believe may only be for Apple phones, and then we've got Envision AI, and then the last one is SuperSense AI, which is not free. That one is paid. So basically, these apps can do a range of things. So they can do the optical character recognition as well, but they can also do what else can they do? I've blanked out, sorry. They can also do currency recognition. So for coins, they recently introduced the Australian currency. With the SuperSense and the Envision, you can also find things in your environment, although the technology is new, so it's a bit touch and go sometimes. But for example, if you've got like a keyboard or a phone on your desk and you're looking for it, you could scan around with the app, and those two apps should be able to find it for you, or a water bottle, things like that. They can even find cats and dogs, which is pretty cool. And then the other thing they can do is they can do light perception. So if you have no vision, if you have guests over and you need to know whether you've turned the lights off without going around and finding every switch to feel it, you could also use this app, and it has a tone that goes up when there's more light and down when there's less light. So there's a really kind of big variety of things that you can use these apps for. They can also recognize people. So with someone's permission, if you take a few photos of them and store it on the app with their name, the next time you're holding up your phone with the app open and your camera's looking around and that the camera identifies the person, the app will say their name, which is also pretty cool and handy. And another thing is the barcode scanning. So I'll give you a bit of an example of this, linking back to that bottle of vitamin D. So I used Seeing AI is the most common one of these apps, and it's not very good with the barcodes unless it's a common brand, particularly an international brand like Arnott's, for example. So with the Swiss vitamin D, I first tried it on the SuperSense. It cannot recognize many barcodes, unfortunately, but the cool thing about it is that you can actually assign your own name to a barcode once it scanned it. So what I did was I tried it on this vitamin D bottle in my office room, which actually has Wonka's gobstoppers in it, not vitamin D. But I called it vitamin D, and then I went to the kitchen and found the other bottle, which did have vitamin D, scanned it, and it did recognize it correctly. So this is really cool for being able to label things around your home, particularly if you can print barcodes off the internet. Some websites, you can use them to kind of print them off and stick them on things. And then you would use SuperSense to label the barcode. But the best app for the barcodes is the Envision AI, which has recently become free. So with that one, if it can't recognize it straight away, it'll try and find a product page, so like a Kohl's page where you can find the name. So as you can tell by that example, all three apps have different pros and cons. So it's a good idea to explore them and see what works best for you, particularly for what you're trying to use them for. And I would start with Seeing AI and Envision first, because those two are free. The next one is apps for visual interpretation. So this just means that we'd be using an app to make a video call to someone, so a human, and ask them for visual information in our environment. So the two main apps are Be My Eyes. So that's a free one, which is volunteer based. So you can sign up for that, give someone a call, and a volunteer will help you out. But just a disclaimer again, when you're signing up, make sure you sign up as someone with a vision impairment, because I had a client that signed up accidentally as a volunteer. So she had an interesting experience, let's say, for the first few weeks with this app. So make sure you sign up as someone with a vision impairment. And the next app is Aira. So this is a company that's based in America, and it's subscription based, so it's not free. You have to pay for it, and it's like a monthly phone plan. But these people, they are trained specifically to help people with a visual impairment, so they might just give you more specific kind of instructions and more detailed instructions. They can also have access to your computer if you grant it, to help you with visual tasks, like designing a card, or maybe creating a diagram, or getting past one of those annoying capture thingies that we all hate. And they can also tell where you are. So they have your location as well, because they're employees. They're all police checked, so they might be able to help you out if you get a bit lost. So that one's Aira. The last category of apps, well, it's not really a category, but I've put it in this category, is apps for labeling. So if you heard of the Pen Friend, which is a device that you can use to label things around your home, this is a similar concept. So it's an app called Way Around, which is one word, so Way Around. And the companies produce these tags called Way tags, and they come in different forms, similar to the Pen Friend. So they've got kind of button ones that you can put on clothes. They're machine washable. Then they've got ones for magnets, and then they've got paper clips, and then they've got the ordinary stickers, maybe for things like your DVDs. So you can use them for various things around the home, like your spice jars, again, DVDs, clothes. If you've got a few shirts, let's say, that feel exactly the same, but that are completely different colors, and you don't want to be wearing an orange shirt with blue denim jeans when you go out, you might want to label some of your clothes with these washable tags. And thanks so much. That's all I've got for you today, but we're going to open it up to questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Abby. That was extremely interesting to see all the different types of aids and devices that are out there. So before we get into questions, I might just give people a quick reminder on how they can ask questions, and how you can do that is, again, through that function at the bottom of your screen. So like I said before, there's a black strip that you might be able to see at the bottom of your screen, and there is an icon which says Q&A. So if you click on that icon, it will bring up the white rectangle where you can type in your question and then select send. Now, before we go into questions, I did want to talk very quickly about the Macular Disease Foundation Australia, which is where I'm from. And we have a goal to try to reduce the incidence and impact of macular disease. And we do this through our 4 pillars. The first pillar being prevention and early detection. So we do webinars such as this and face-to-face education sessions, trying to provide current, accurate, and ongoing information about macular diseases and vision loss. Support and services. So we support the entire macular disease community, whether it be clients, patients, family members, friends, or even carers of those with macular disease. I'll talk a bit more about this in a moment. Voice of the macular disease community. So we advocate quite heavily to state and federal government to try and make sure and design policies that are advantageous for the macular disease community. And finally, research and data. So we donate quite a bit of funding to research projects. We've donated a massive $5.1 million since 2011 to 29 different research projects. Now, if you do have any further questions, so not just about low vision aids, but say you have questions about age-related macular degeneration or maybe diabetic eye disease, or a completely different macular disease. Perhaps you have questions about Medicare or my aged care, or perhaps you just have a friend that needs to get to an eye appointment, but they don't have the transport to do so. If that is the case, you can give our helpline number a call, which is 1-800-111-709. If not, you can email us or you can pop on our website as well. And absolutely everything we provide is for free. So please do reach out if you have any questions. Now, at the end of this webinar, I will be sending through an email to everybody. Now, that email will contain a few different links. It will contain a link to a survey where you can give us some feedback. It will also allow you to order any resources that you would like to. And there will also be a link to previous webinars. We do a lot of webinars on a lot of different topics. So these have been recorded and you can watch them in your own time. All right, so I might start off with some questions. So Abby, I'd like to invite you back onto the screen. We do have quite a few questions. I'll see if I can get through as many as possible. So someone asked, should we start learning Braille when we still have sight? And if so, how do we do this and where do we go to learn?
That's a fantastic question. I would say that it is a good idea to start learning Braille when you do have sight. And I'm speaking from personal experience because I was actually given the chance when I was in school and I said, oh, I don't need Braille. And now I'm like, oh, that was a shame that I didn't look into that before. But yes, I would certainly say because there are visual kind of pictures of the Braille cells for each letter. And I think it would be good to kind of look at them and be able to visualize them. Yeah, so definitely you can start learning early. There's a few different ways you can learn. There is an app which I used this year actually to learn it. It's called Braille Trainer. I'm not sure if it's available on Android, but you can get it on iPhones. Or I'm pretty sure that Vision Australia and Next Sense will be the people to go to do a Braille course.
Perfect. Another question we have is, do you have any suggestions for apps on Windows to read web pages, like a Google extension?
A Google extension. So I don't know the names of them by heart. I know there are a few text to speech. So if you look up text to speech and then Chrome extension, you might be able to find a few. I would say that on Windows computers, what you can do is if you turn on the magnifier, you might see on the top right-hand corner, there'll be a little bar that comes up. So even if you're not using magnification, what you can do is you can go to the web page with the magnifier on, highlight the text, and then there's a little speech button in that toolbar that you can use to read a web page as well, if you can't find an extension.
Oh, perfect. That's a great little trick. And I think there's also a website called Natural Reader, where I think if someone has a lot of text, you can copy that text and pop it into Natural Reader and it will read it out to you. But that's just a website rather than sort
fantastic.
of a Google extension. Yeah, I think that's a nifty little one as well. And it's free, which is great.
That's awesome.
So this one is someone has written a question regarding their mother. They're trying to connect their home phone to a mobile or, essentially just a phone where it's a little bit easy for somebody with low vision to use. Do you have any recommendations, whether it be sort of landline or mobile phone?
Yep. So at Guide Dogs, it's more the occupational therapists that look at kind of landlines and the more simple vision-specific phones. So unfortunately, I can't give too much detail about that. But what I have tried out recently is a new phone called the Blind Shell Classic 2. So it's kind of it's like those old cell phones. So you've got a physical keypad, and it's got a fairly large screen. But the good thing about it is that it's all voiced. It's self-voicing. So it uses a screen reader, like I mentioned before, and you can use the buttons on the phone to navigate. So you'll always know where you are. It's a semi-smartphone as well, so you can use things like WhatsApp. There's a notepad. I think you can search the web as well. So it's just a simpler version of a smartphone. That might be a good one. It's around $850, that one, and you can now get it from Quantum.
Oh, there you go. So Quantum, for those of you that haven't heard of it, is a low vision company that can provide aids. So you can definitely contact them for different types of aids. This one is about screen readers. Am I able to access a screen reader for my iPhone? And if so, how do I do that?
Yes, definitely. So the one that I demoed today was VoiceOver. So the good thing about Apple devices is that the screen readers are already built in, so you could use it straight away out of the box. So if your iPhone is already set up, maybe you could help someone to help you set it up. Sorry, get someone to help you set it up if it's your first time. So to access the screen reader, once you're on the home screen, if you go to settings and then accessibility, and then the first option in that accessibility page under the vision heading, which is right up the top, is VoiceOver. So VoiceOver is the screen reader you would use on an iPhone.
Perfect. And I've heard that a lot of people do find VoiceOver to be extremely useful in their everyday life. So definitely one to try. Yeah.
Definitely.
And we are running a bit short on time, so I might do one last question, or I'll see if I can squeeze into. So I have an elderly mother that isn't too comfortable with assistive technology. Is there something that I can do to make that a little bit easier, or to encourage her to use assistive technology more?
So I think in this case, it might be good to start with a virtual assistant. So even something simple as getting her a Google or an Amazon device, if you can set it up yourself and then get her to do things like ask the time or find a recipe or the weather, that might just get her kind of used to it a bit more. If she has a smartphone, she could use the virtual assistant to send text messages and make calls as well. So I think ease her into it with that. And I think a lot of practice and support. And if you stay positive about it, so if she's making a lot of mistakes, it's really important that the person that's helping out stays positive as well, to kind of help her get through it and become more comfortable.
Perfect. And one last question. Would you be able to provide any recommendations for the ORC device? I think you mentioned a few before, but they were asking if you could repeat some of them, just because they didn't get to write down all of them.
Oh, yeah, sure. So for the devices, there was, for the magnification OCR, there was a Zoomax Snow. So that's ZOOMAX, and then the next word is Snow. And then there's another one called the Prodigy. So those are the ones with the tablet-like screen and a camera. Or if you wanted a standalone one, you could look at the Read Easy Evolve or the Clear Reader.
Perfect. Well, Abby, thank you so much for all your information. That was incredible. I, for one, definitely learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did as well. And hopefully for those of you that did ask questions, but we didn't get to go through it, I do apologize. We have run out of time. However, we will try to answer those questions. We'll try to email you. And of course, this webinar has been recorded. So if there is anything that you've missed, you will receive a link for that in the email. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you found it informative. And again, another big thank you to Abby for joining us. That was really great. Thank you very much, everybody.